Hi, Eric.
Hey, what's up?
Here we are in
We're
person.
in
That's
person
so
this
funny.
time.
Person.
Yeah. How's it going?
Why does my head look so much bigger than yours? Is it the camera angle?
Yeah.
It must be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 15. 15. Can you believe how productive we've been?
Yeah. When did we start?
Last August.
Okay.
So today, we are going to talk about the Equalizer movies, the series of Eric actually watched all three, Equalizer 1, Equalizer 2, and Equalizer 3. And this is the series of movies that it has the same name and the same kind of concept as the original TV series that appeared either in the 70s or the 80s. It was some old white-haired dude. I feel like he used to wear gloves too. He used to walk around like an overcoat and gloves. And the marketing was always he's the equalizer. He helps people.
Yeah.
And now there's a series on Paramount, I think, or Hulu. I think it's Paramount, which stars Queen Latifah as the Equalizer. But this series of movies it was directed by Antoine Fuqua, and all three of them starred Denzel Washington, and the most recent one just came out last year, and this was reportedly Denzel's last as the Equalizer. I recently watched all three of these movies. I just started watching them last year, and since then I started watching them, I've watched them more times than I can count. I don't know why I watched them so many times. So it was one of those movies where when it was on TV, Dad would always be watching it, and I would glance at it, be like, "Oh, that looks interesting, but kind of violent." And then one day I just decided to watch The Equalizer from start to finish, and I loved it for some reason. So I kept on. I wasn't really urging you to watch it, but I was like, you should watch The Equalizer
Yeah.
because you were a big fan of John Wick.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of similarities there, and I do love Denzel Washington, even though I don't think I've seen him in that many movies actually. But this was something I'd always wanted to see, and it was fun. I just love a good action romp. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Well, actually, we should start there in terms of talking about good action romps, because there's been a positive explosion of um, movies where it's this sort of enigmatic, likable guy or person, and they're living this ordinary life, and they live in a small town or they live like relatively anonymous life, and then all of a sudden you find out through some circumstances or whatever, you find out that they are in reality these secret assassins or special ops people who have insane skills. One day I would really like to ask an actual special ops person whether or not they actually do have those types
Definitely.
of skills
Yeah,
because
definitely.
they're almost superhuman in terms of their fighting ability. Like they are unbelievable in terms of their fighting ability. And so there's been a whole rash of these movies. And a lot of them actually, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of them came out. A big reason why they became so big is because Keanu Reeves really gave a lot of help to the people who he made John Wick with. So the guys, this is David Leitch, this is Chad Stilvesky. These are his former stunt people who then turned into directors, and then they started making all these incredible hits with these incredibly choreographed fight sequences. So fight sequences, they started to become very, very choreographed in Hong Kong cinema. And then it went to The Matrix, which you also saw in the theater this past week. But anyway, so we got to this whole thing where it was like the best action sequence ever. I just want to say up front that there are people who I accept in the role of secret assassin, and there are
Yeah.
people who I do not. So sometimes when I watch a promo for a new secret assassin movie, I'm like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like I don't buy that person at all.
Mhm.
So Dad, I think recently watched the one with Allison Janney in the who she was the one who had the secret assassin skills. I know that there was one with Jennifer Lopez who also had secret assassin skills. Shouldn't laugh. But some people are believable in these roles and some people are not believable in these roles.
Yeah.
So that is my thesis going into this, but for whatever reason, my two favorite people in these roles are Keanu Reeves in John Wick and Denzel Washington as the Equalizer.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have to be sort of unique in what they bring to that because, everybody's seen it a million times. Like,
Yes, a million times.
I definitely didn't watch Equalizer or wasn't looking to watch Equalizer because I had already seen John Wick and I love John Wick.
Yeah.
But I did want to see what Denzel brought to that role that was unique. Um, and I don't know if I would have picked up on the OCD thing if you didn't mention it, but that's really interesting. And it's like and obviously he's a really great actor too, so he just brings a lot of character. But if it's just going to be another blank slate, like
Yes.
agent or just like I haven't seen the shit, but like Jack Reacher, Jason Bourne, um,
Oh, interesting.
I don't know like those because those kind of also fit that realm of like there's that one guy that we gotta
Yes,
watch
they
out
do fit
for.
that realm. Absolutely.
But I haven't seen those, so I don't know how unique those are. But that seems like in the more generic realm. I don't know.
Yes.
I've
Well,
never seen
actually, I've seen Reacher. I did not see the original. I saw bits of
it.
the original one with Tom Cruise, and I actually agree with the people who said that he was just too little for that role because people are really invested in that character. It's based on the series of novels about Jack Reacher, and he's described as a huge, huge guy. So to have like little Tom Cruise like running around and little legs, like
Yeah,
it didn't make sense, you know?
yeah. There's Mission Impossible though,
Yeah. Well,
but
that's because the story was adapted to fit him. Do you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like the story is adapted to fit the character. Like if you're going to make it has to be a completely different Jack Reacher if you're going to cast Tom Cruise in it. That's probably the whole point about these assassin movies is that the role has to fit the strengths of the actor. So
yeah,
the Reacher TV series on Amazon Prime is actually pretty good. Alan Ritchie is pretty good in that role, although the plots for whatever reason feel a lot more generic. But the second season was interesting. And then what was the other one that you mentioned?
Jason Bourne.
Oh, Jason Bourne. I thought that Matt Damon was really good as Jason Bourne, but it was taken over by that director, Paul Greengrass, who made this famous film about the United flight that crashed on 9/11.
Mm.
And Paul Greengrass was a huge fan of the handheld camera. He really, that was his signature, was to use the handheld camera to signify the violence and the quick cuts in action scenes. So I saw the first Jason Bourne film with him. Also read two of the Jason Bourne novels, and I was completely motion sick, like really, really, really motion
Yeah.
sick. So I cannot watch any of the Bourne movies except for the last one, the Legacy one with Jeremy Renner instead of Matt Damon. So, but overall, I think you got to be a certain type of convincing as this. I think number one, you have to play against expectations, right? You can't come off as an overtly violent guy. You have to come off as this really sort of quiet gravitas dude. That's the number one requirement. And then number two, you have to not be overly flashy about what your backstory is. It has to come out like in little hints.
Mhm.
So you have to be the type of actor who can really um, communicate things through your silence and then through your gravitas. So this is, I know I'm talking about Keanu and Denzel here, but like there's so much silence in both the John Wick movies. Like for example, when Keanu Reeves is just listening to the phone or just he says very few words, very little dialogue, and Denzel has very little dialogue too. And he's an amazing actor. He could handle lots of dialogue, but he manages to invest every little gesture with
Yeah.
significance. Okay, so why don't we talk then about you saw all three movies this weekend, starting on Friday. So what was your overall impression? And then you can go ahead and rank them, even though I know how you feel about them already.
Yeah, okay. Well, since you mentioned what the actors need to bring to the roles, that makes it fun and interesting. I will just point out that I think the Equalizer movies did stand apart from John Wick after watching. Like they had a way different feel and style, and while
Hmm.
keeping the same genre intact. So like the quiet moments that you were mentioning, I think John Wick had way less of those.
Hmm.
I think The Equalizer was not afraid to really immerse you in the world and in Denzel in Robert McCall's world
Hmm.
specifically because he's his character is fully about a man who actually cares about the community he lives in, the people he meets,
Yes.
his friends. Like he deeply because he lives alone and he lost his wife and he doesn't have many connections. Like those things really matter to him. And I think that those
That's very
movies,
sensitive of you to observe.
yeah, those movies don't stray away from spending enough time really establishing that, which I really appreciate about those movies. But what I want from that is also a good enough follow-up. Like if you're gonna have all this build-up, then you have to have a good finish and a good. So, in the first movie, it takes a long time to establish, okay, this guy's like very nice guy, very quiet, nice guy. There's something about him though. You don't know. Um, and then that first fight scene, it does deliver. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, it establishes everything you need to know for the rest of of the movies too, because it's like, okay, he sees everything. That's one thing, and he uses his stopwatch. He really cares about the timing, like all that stuff.
I like also the fact it also establishes how much people underestimate him because of his
Yeah,
age and because he's kind of
yes,
he's kind of a dumpy old guy,
yeah,
He's not like super
yeah,
fit.
yeah,
So there's always this look where, when he's moving the skulls around on the desk, Slavi looks at his like,
yeah,
look at this
yeah.
guy.
Where John Wick, I think, is very stylized. It's very the music is amazing and like and the acting and everything. Like it's very aesthetic. I think the Equalizer risks um taking some of that away and only delivering it when it really matters so that you can have a bit more in-depth character and perspective because Denzel is a much deeper character than John Wick. That's just like a fact. Like because
Yeah,
John Wick, you don't know enough about him, like, and you're not supposed to really. It's just sort of like that's part of his character. He's just like
right.
sort of a mystical figure. Um, and the fun of it is like guessing what he's like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
or getting little hints. But Denzel is like pretty straightforward. He's like just a
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. The rules are very like there are very few rules in the John Wick universe, but there are rules. Like it's the Continental has its own set of
Yeah,
rules, breaking the contract, killing somebody. And then also John Wick's rules are also like he always has to dress up.
yeah, yeah,
And then the currency is different.
yeah,
Like there's 5 or 6 rules that you can carry around with, and I like how efficient they are about
yeah,
establishing them.
yeah. Um, yeah, and but it's 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 just a preference thing, I guess, when it comes to these movies. But anyways, ranking them, I would put Equalizer 2 is my favorite. Then the first,
Controversial
yeah,
opinion.
controversial apparently because not a lot of people reviewed that well. Um, then the first one, and then the third one. I didn't like the third one that much, but like because I mean I guess we'll get into it, but like the third one got into the more generic, you know, sort of elements. Like it had those unique parts about the Equalizer that I really love, but the follow-up was very generic and sort of bland. Like especially, as soon as you introduce like agent characters, like that has to those any generic like, oh, this person works at the CIA, like these CIA agents, like they have to be justified as to why they're there. Obviously, it was until at the very end
Yeah.
of Equalizer 3 when you realize it's his friend's daughter. But like, the whole time I'm just like, who is this? Like, I don't care. Um, if I knew that from the get-go, maybe I would have cared about her actually. But because they saved that reveal for the end, I just didn't really,
Do you
didn't care.
think I like the third movie?
What?
Um, because I watched the third movie, I waited for it to come out. I again was doing this thing that I'm doing with the beekeeper. Oh, by the way, Jason Statham is another one who I
Oh,
like.
Jason Statham. Jason
Yeah, Statham.
Statham.
I like
Yeah.
him in that role. I
He
like him in these roles.
he's really funny because he's just the same person in every movie.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, anyways.
Well, no, he is the same person, but he's even more like, for example, he can push who he is to comedic effect. Like he's
Yeah,
great in Spy. He's unbelievably funny in
yeah,
Spy.
he's the comedic side of that character,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
which is really great.
He's the comedic side of that assassin, the scene, but he's got crazy skills,
Yeah,
And so I have watched Equalizer 1 and 2 many times before watching Equalizer 3 for the first time. So I don't know. I liked it so much, and I liked it because of Denzel, and I liked it because Denzel was both righteous in his kicking everybody's ass,
yeah.
but also because he was conflicted.
Mhm.
So um over time, I became invested in the character arc over 3 movies, not just what was happening in the third movie. So the third movie to me was actually an appropriate send-off for Robert McCall. So the first movie found him in this place where he had not been exercising his special set of skills, as Liam Neeson would put it. See now there's all these characters and I can
Yeah,
decide.
there's so many you think of now.
There's so
Liam
many
Neeson is,
lines.
yeah,
But anyway, he had not been doing that for a long time. And then he suddenly, and actually, that was a subject of the conversation between him and Susan, which is why now? Why help somebody now? And he had retreated from life and was sort of living life, perfect at this lower level, of um, working in the Home Depot-like place. And then helping a friend out, doing these really small scale things, like helping people out in really small ways and having people kind of guess like, oh, what were you beforehand? Blah, 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 like all these little guesses, right? And then Equalizer, the first one is where he gets pulled back into that, he slowly gets pulled back into it. And then he decides because he clearly feels very conflicted about it. He has a lot of dark moments where he's like, I'm such a killer. I'm very morally compromised. There's no good or bad. I've done like really, really terrible things. So I can only live by my own code, right? And his own code by the end of the first movie is I'm going to try to help people if I can help people. And by the second movie, he's helped. He's helped a lot. He's still helping people. It's now a business for him, right? But then he finds out his only friend, his only person who knows him in both lives has been murdered,
yeah, yeah,
right? And then the third movie is where he's still like sort of pursuing this I'm helping people because he was trying to track down that guy's pension funds and then he
yeah,
stumbles into this whole big mess.
yeah,
And then he finds this place in Italy, this town, Altamonte, where he feels some measure of peace, where people, how can I say this? I don't know if you know the backstory on the whole mafia and Sicily and everything like that, but the whole background on the Camorra, as they call it, the Camorra, is that it's a world where there's so much violence. Like I was sort of thinking, oh, that's horrible for that little girl, the daughter of the police officer, to witness that much violence. But at the same time, everybody who's grown up in that culture understands that violence. They understand gangsters and mafia rules and killings and everything. It might have gotten better, but I actually don't know if it's gotten better in the past like few decades because it's still a huge problem. Organized crime is a huge, huge problem. And so he's found peace in this place of moral ambiguity. Like people understand moral ambiguity. They're being terrorized, so they're just trying to live the best way that they can. So he just decides, look, I'm just going to have one fucking last hurrah where I'm going to wipe these evil bad guys off the face of the earth. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to enlist my old friend Susan's, daughter to do it. I know I just spoiled the movie for someone who hasn't seen it, but in terms of Robert McCall's character arc from the first movie to the third movie, I liked the way that the third movie wrapped it up. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And yeah,
I think,
I don't actually think that he's going to. Number one, I believe Denzel when he says he's not going to make any more Equalizer movies. And number two, I actually think that Robert McCall is going to be the character, is going to settle down in Altamonte, maybe date that woman who took him to Taco Seafood. And I think that if there's some other violence, maybe he'll take care of it, but not unless it's at the scale of what it was before. I think he might be done,
yeah,
is what I'm saying.
I
And he's getting old
I
too.
agree that his arc was great. I think like the setting, the context for the third movie was really great, and I was really loving the build up because he was really getting to know these like the Italian people. He couldn't be more opposite. I mean, like from where he's from, like and like Boston, like um it's a much prettier place and also like friendlier place, I think.
Yes.
Just in general. Because these people who had never met him, they just started seeing him one day, and now all of a sudden we're like best friends. So I love that setup. But the execution I just thought was like towards the end or in the middle, and then at the end was like there were things I thought were out of character, and not out of character in that like he was changing, but just out of character. Like if they were going to justify some of the changes they did, I feel like it should have been a bit better. Like,
More earned.
yeah, like so there was the scene where the gangsters, his brother, the gangster's brother is dead, and then they come and they like basically just like they get everybody out, and then they're like, all right, who fucking killed my brother? Like, and for McCall to come out and just be like, it was me. Yep, and you know what? You're a bad guy. I don't like you. I'm yeah, this is not gonna, you really want to kill me in front of all these people, and people have their phones out and stuff. And then the gangsters are like, yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back, and then McCall's like, yeah, you better be back. And it's like, what is going on? That's never how he's handled, or that's never how these situations have fallen out. And
I disagree.
I like
I think he waits. I think he waits and strikes. I think that he waits. Like,
there was, yeah,
but like the same exact thing happened with the ring, the very first movie where, the guy stole the ring. Like he wasn't going to reveal who he was in front of everybody. Like he wasn't going to commit murder and stop that thief right in front of everybody. He instead walked outside, looked at his license plate, and then he returned the ring later on.
sorry, which scene?
When the cashier, his friend at the Home Depot
Yeah.
place,
Oh yeah, yeah,
then
the
she gets
ring.
held up. Yeah. So in most
Yeah,
in most cases,
yeah,
McCall assesses the situation, right? He
yeah,
assesses the situation and he decides what am I going to do or what can I do,
yeah.
right? So in the moment of in the end of Equalizer 3, he's basically saying, I don't obviously want this police officer to die on my behalf, right? So I don't want him to, and there's very little I can do to prevent the police officer from being executed in the square except by giving himself up.
I know.
So then he's saying, then I'm going to take my chances by fighting. Like, can I fight out in the open? And Vincent is saying, no, I'm going to shoot you right here, right? And then Enzo intervenes with the shotgun.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm saying like the
Makes
staging,
sense to
the
me.
staging, no, that makes sense, but I'm saying the staging of it like just doesn't make sense in the Equalizer movies in my opinion. Like because everything that um McCall does that's related to what he like his work as the Equalizer is always it's always way more covert. Like he makes sure that nobody really knows like that he does all this, and that's for their benefit too.
Yes.
So for I know that the gangsters showed up and they created this circumstance, but I'm saying in the writing of the movie they didn't have to do that. Like they didn't have to keep going in circles like that. Like because that and it also like or at least if Robert McCall was going to come out and be like, I'm the one that killed your brother. Like, we're not going to, we can't do this right here. Like, phones and like the phones are out, and Enzo's here with his shotgun. Like, it's very complicated, guys. You guys might want to go back, actually. Like, if that's going to be what's happening, then it needs to be way more significant in terms of how that's coming to light, or how he's coming to light in that sense. Like,
Yes.
it should be such a huge conflict that he's like, I'm the one. Yeah, it's me. Like it's me. Like I'm giving myself up in terms of like this is what I'm doing now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. And I'm just going to agree to disagree. We have to agree to disagree on this one because to me, it made sense based on that overall character arc that I was just talking about. So the reason why it makes sense in terms of the overall character arc is that I think that in this third movie, he was sloppier than normal. Like he wasn't as tied up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he wasn't as efficient as he normally is. And I think that it was all his whole.
I mean, apparently he was. He literally murdered the entire gang
No, I know.
afterwards.
Well,
Yeah.
my point is that the movie begins with him just trying to retrieve, you know, Greg Dyer's pension, and he stumbles into this huge organized crime operation, right? And then he gets caught off guard because the little boy shoots him and catches him off guard,
Yeah.
and so he almost dies, he almost bleeds out, and then he's saved by this town, by the doctor, and then by this town who all take him in and welcome.
Yeah.
So I think that, how can I say this? In my view, Robert McCall is now having an appreciation of his own mortality and his own weakness. He's like, I can't do this anymore.
Uh-huh.
Like, I can't continue to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because not only I'm not the only one at risk. Now I like put this whole town at risk. And the town's already at risk, which is how he justifies it. But he's like, things are messy. Like he doesn't like to do messy. He hates messy. He
Yeah,
likes to quietly, surgically
yeah,
kill people and remove them.
yeah,
So he was forced to go out in the open, right? And because Vincent made it very public, and he was forced to like really make this big. He already screwed up. I think the restaurant scene was kind of a screw up,
yeah.
because he
That was
already,
also yeah. I
yeah,
also thought that that was out of
right.
character.
So he was basically like warring with himself, like, I can't sit by and let these awful people terrorize this town that I've grown to be and these people that I'm fond of. But now I have to reveal myself and make these choices, and the choices are not going to be good choices. They're just not going to be good choices. So I think the third movie is about him knowing that he's losing it, right? He's not able to be the same type of stealth assassin, surgically precise
Yeah,
assassin. And so it's basically like the subtitle is Robert McCall's retirement plan,
yeah,
which is like, I'm gonna retire from being the equalizer and I'm gonna do it in this town. I think I can do it. But I have to do one last cleanup and it's going to be awful and it's going to be gory. And
yeah,
I'd like to do it my way, to do it covertly and stealth, but Vincent forced his hand by calling him out in
yeah,
the middle of the square.
yeah.
That's how I see
Okay, I
it.
see that. I see that. I'm just saying there's no acknowledgement of that in the. I don't think there's any acknowledgement of that huge shift. Like there's like he does those things, we see them, but we don't see him grappling with the fact that he's doing it. You know, like he doesn't
Oh, I think he is grappling with it.
like we didn't when
Like he's grappling with it because he is so bewildered when that little boy shoots him, you know? He's so bewildered by it. He's just like, "Oh my God, that's never happened to me before." He's never lost that confidence in
yeah.
himself. And then some little kid takes him out,
Hmm.
and then he can't shoot him back because that's against his moral code. So he suddenly realizes that it's a lot messier and that he himself can't handle it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I see that.
So anyway, that's how I argue
Yeah,
it.
I wanted more. I just wanted more upfront acknowledgement of that within the writing, because it was just sort of played out, like because then of course he goes to get the gangster's house and then he does the thing he's always been doing,
Yes, he
like and
was
then he
given a reprieve. Yes.
yeah, so and then it's like not, and then the town is just doing their religious ceremony. It's like, okay, yeah, cool,
Yeah, I know.
like I know they intercut that to sort of have some symbolism of like, oh, he's like it's
Right.
sort of like a religious thing, like this is like a
No,
ceremonious thing.
the annoying thing about that is that Vincent would let that happen. Like if you were, that's one of those things where, in the superhero movies where the villain says, "I'm going to burn your family," like
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you all of my plans so that you can counteract them.
yeah.
So Vincent and his crew walking away and going back to the house is basically saying, "Oh, they're not going to let Robert McCall be Robert McCall. They're going to let him like kill." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's
it's
weird to
dumb.
me.
That is
Yeah.
dumb. I agree. It's a little dumb, and they try to explain it away by saying, "Oh, there's intervention. There's all these cameras out, blah blah blah," but it doesn't really hold up. I agree. It doesn't really hold up. But at the same time, it is satisfying to let Robert McCall finally do his thing,
Yeah.
which is just take them all out of sight of the townspeople. Don't bother them with it.
Well, he
Kill it.
didn't though. That because then he lets him crawl all the way outside the mansion, all the way down this street, gets hit by a car. Onlookers are like, "Yo, what's going on? Like, let me film this." And McCall's just like, "No, let me just eat an apple. Like, oh, fuck you. Like, you die." Like, and then walks away. And then again, no acknowledge. It's like, I just did that. And
People
then
on YouTube are very bothered that he did not pay for the apple.
yeah.
I'm
No,
sure
that exactly. Like, if he has some moral code, like
I'm sure he left $1.
no, no. Yeah, I'm sure. Sure he left it on. No, again, though, there's no, I mean, there maybe we see that conflict like you're saying when he gets shot in the beginning, that we're seeing his inner conflict that way, but
Right,
we're not seeing his inner conflict with talking to the people
right.
also, because there's no like, I almost wish that he like at some point, like had the like he had some sort of like the, or like Enzo has his shotgun, like if he just like took it from him and just had like a moment of like, yeah, I'm gonna do this for you, like you don't have to do this or something, you know?
Actually help. That's a good idea. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a deleted scene.
I think I should be the filmmaker and I should make the movie.
Well, let's talk about what you actually liked overall about all of the Equalizer
Yes,
movies. So,
sure.
and by the way, you've seen Training Day, and I have not.
Oh,
I think that Training Day, also by Antoine Fuqua, is very the way I've heard it, it's very morally complex. And like it might be one of those things where I feel like there might be no one to root for. I don't know. But I do think after now seeing all three Equalizer movies multiple times, I do think that Antoine Fuqua has a great style.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think he has a really, really great style. And one thing that I think he gets right is that I think he gets pacing
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So I think that the score, for example, the build up, the music is used always appropriately as build up. There's a little bit, he's a little bit heavy-handed on building the ominous tone, like using music to build the ominous tone. But for the most part, I thought that the music ramped up when it should have ramped up.
yeah.
And then I also think that his style is really interesting because it's dark and it's grainy, but it doesn't make it so obvious like Zack Snyder. It doesn't look like everything is washed out in
Mm,
gray filter. So I think I think it's just the right amount of grit, and just the right amount of like reality. And then what was interesting to me in the first film, was that everything inside of Home Mart, the Home Depot like place, is always shot like very bright and cheery,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden when you get to the Russian scenes, like everything goes like super dark and grainy, which I think is both photography, it's both cinematography, but it's also production design,
yeah,
So they managed to convey mood. And his crew,
yeah,
they managed to convey moods really, really
yeah,
well, I think.
yeah.
What else did
Well,
you
they
like
also,
about?
yeah, all of those design elements that you pointed out that are true also balance just really well with how, with just, McCall's character and
Yes,
Denzel's character. Like, he does a perfect job balancing gentle old man,
yes,
like actually friendly person
yes,
versus like killing machine that will like deadpan just stare at you like
yes.
until you do the right thing.
Yes, that is
Um,
actually a crazy, that's a really good way to describe it.
yeah.
And I think he's crazy good at it.
He's so good at it.
Yeah.
Like he's like a phantom, like a ghost, like in these and it's not like he's not like John Wick when in these like violent scenes where like John Wick I think will just like boom,
Yeah.
like he'll just work really hard to just kill you as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Denzel's like, no, like I'm terrified, like I'm scaring you. This is you're gonna be haunted by this, into death. Like
Yes.
it's not, and it's not just like because they come up with so many unique ways that he kills people. It's crazy.
Yes.
Um,
But he's not
because
overly.
he's sending a message too about
Yes.
that righteousness. Like
Yes.
he's also like he's a hero. He's like an anti-hero, but
Yeah.
he's
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 not
creating a
overly
message.
sentimental about it though.
No,
He's not overly sentimental. Like the thing I think about on the sentiment, like for example, Pedro Pascal's character kidnaps that kid in order to have leverage
right?
over Robert,
Yeah,
right? And he says that he knows that it's somebody that you care about, so you're going to try to save him, and it's going to compromise you in this last battle,
yeah,
right? But at the end, when that guy is like whimpering and freaked out and traumatized from
mhm,
from being shot,
yeah,
Denzel is not like, "Oh, are you
yeah.
feeling okay?" or whatever. He's just like, "Just
You'll be fine.
you'll be fine. Just bind it. It'll
Yeah,
stop bleeding. You'll be fine."
yeah,
Yeah, I lived here. It's like
yeah,
what he's just totally buttoned
yeah,
down.
yeah.
So it's very interesting.
He's something that's a little small conflict with him is like the fact that he makes connections, but those connections can backfire
Yes,
because they can be used against him,
that's
right?
correct.
That's one element, and he's never. There's no scenes, yeah, of him being like, "Man, I'm sorry" or whatever, like or
Yeah,
acknowledging, like he'll just move on, like he'll just go
yeah,
to the next place.
yeah.
So I think that's why I was waiting in three for that to be directly addressed. Like, can you be ousted as this, fucking killing machine and be a nice person and like keep this community at the same time.
Yeah.
I think there was a great opportunity for because the people had felt so much um terror with the gangsters there. There could have been an opportunity to be like, yeah, we are fine with it actually. Like you're the best.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
That could have been established. That was very, very much that backstory was very much established in
Yeah.
the Godfather
Yeah.
movies, by the way. Like in the Godfather movies, there's all this line in both the movies and in the book itself where they say that children are grow up knowing that their brothers and their fathers are all going to carry around sawed-off shotguns, and that most people will have some type of disfigurement
Yeah.
from violence,
Yeah.
you know? So that's what I mean. It is an atmosphere steeped in violence,
Yeah.
particularly Sicily, you
Yeah.
know? So Sicily, Sardinia, that whole area is just really well known. So the people accept breed, and they would rather obviously root for the anti-hero
Yeah.
than they would,
Yeah.
than they would be ruled by terror
Yeah.
because they know that he's not going to rule them by terror.
Right.
Anyway.
And
So actually, I want to hear more though about why you like the second one the
yeah,
best.
totally. I think because, something that's unique about McCall's character is that it's about justice. It's about delivering justice and doing the right thing because
Yeah,
he can do something about like the injustice that's happening. So like I definitely focus very much on what that exact thing is. So the first movie, the his friend who he meets at a cafe is a prostitute and she's being abused, like, and she can't take it anymore. So
right,
that's his reason. Um, and then the second one, his friend is murdered, like his best friend, and he needs to find out what happened and how it happened. And once he realizes it's his other friend that murdered her, then that's what that's what it becomes about. Um, and then the third movie was that this gang was, encroaching on this town, this beautiful town, and I need to stop them.
right.
So
He originally showed up to recover Greg Dyer's pension.
that too, yeah.
Yes.
So those were the three things. And I think I love a good revenge story, that's like really steeped in just personal
Right, like you
and
killed the
and
dog
super
of you
personal. Yeah.
killed the dog that my late wife gave me
Yeah.
after that. Like
Yeah.
that is that, by the way, when you talk about motivation, that's motivation.
Yeah. That's one of the main reasons that the first John Wick was so good was because
Yes.
they established such a brutal premise.
I've never wanted to kill
Yeah.
anyone as much as I want to kill a
Yeah. I like because especially in Equalizer 2, you go in knowing Denzel and McCall and their character, like you know what he's like. And they show that in that first scene in Turkey. And then they have a really sweet, just like a really, really sweet scene with his friend who's literally there basically just to check up on him.
Yeah, because it's his wife's birthday.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that it was just I think that was a really touching scene. All the stuff I was talking about with him caring about his community and his friends, like that was really established there. And then having that taken away, also huge.
Yes. Did you notice, by the way, that he killed Pedro Pascal in exactly the same way that he killed Susan? Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah, because Pedro Pascal, after Susan was beaten up,
Mm,
he, put his hand over her mouth and then he knifed her right
yeah,
under the ribs, under
yeah.
the heart. And then when Denzel is fighting Pedro Pascal on top of the tower,
Hmm.
he, does all this brutal, bloody things, and then
Yeah.
he kills him in the exact
Yeah.
same
I
spot.
mean that
He
again,
shows a knife
that's
under
fucking
it.
dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. I think
Why are we so bloodthirsty though?
yeah.
That's a thing. Like
There was so Equalizer 2 was almost losing me when he was getting into the details of like how did Susan get killed because I
Mhm,
also wasn't following everything. Like
mhm.
all I was following though was that he was finding out what was happening and he was updating his friend.
Yeah.
Um, but so then when the shift comes, when we realize that the friend is like the one who killed her, that makes it really that much more dramatic. Um, and because this movie was where they were also hinting more at like his past.
Yeah.
They weren't giving that much at all. Like,
Yeah.
but you were given little details that you could fill in the blanks and it could be really interesting.
Yeah. He
So
served in
that's
the military or the
yeah,
CIA or something. Like he
yeah.
definitely had, yes.
And he had like a crew like of people that he
Yes.
knew that he trusted.
He was their
And
team leader.
yeah, and yeah, he was their team leader, and like his team, is now the people he has to murder because they are the ones that lost it. And
Right. They're contract killers, basically.
Yeah.
They're contract killers. And Susan stumbled across one of their contract
Right.
killings.
Yeah.
And so that, yes.
And I think so that was all a great setup. And I think again, I was talking about how I needed to finish well if we're gonna have this good a setup. I was really satisfied with that setup, but I was also really satisfied with the finish because it took place during like a hurricane in this beach town. I was like, where did this come from? Like they hadn't I don't there was no news reports or anything they played of like a hurricane coming or whatever. It's just like, oh, this town's like he's from a town that's right now evacuating from a hurricane, but he's just gonna go in there. Oh, I just need to grab some stuff real
I
quick.
think they referenced it when he rescued Susan's husband.
Mhm.
So when they were sitting inside the motel where he placed Susan's husband, I think that there might have been a news report about a coming
Yeah,
hurricane.
maybe.
Yeah, I think that that's where,
But it was so like
right,
just off to the side. I was like, oh, okay, like whatever.
right.
But
Yeah, it
then,
was never explained like how like that's the first time he's been back,
yeah,
where where he lived with
history
his late
there.
wife, right? And then it's funny that they knew that
Yeah,
he would go back there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just it was such an interesting fight because Pedro's Pascal's character immediately takes
He
that
looks
tower.
baby faced, by the way.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this is not the
with
full.
no facial hair, he looks so funny.
He looks so
I don't
funny.
understand it. He's just like a different person.
He is.
But he's still a great actor.
He is a great actor. Yeah.
And it's so funny because as
He's
much
dead.
as
He died.
I thought he was going to be sort of a side character, but he was like I thought he was a really great villain. And he was on that tower the whole time, so it made the fight on the ground very interesting because you knew he was always up there. And then Denzel again, he's a phantom. Like he's like posting pictures of Susan on the
Yes.
walls, and
Yeah.
he's killing them off one by one, and then they made the conflict really interesting when that kid was brought in too, which was a great scene by the way when he was in the house and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Again, with his relationships and how they interfere. Again, okay, so I'm just saying like I think it was really well put together. I'm struggling to find what people didn't like about it. I like because I just thought it was just everything I wanted out of that was mystical but also understandable about McCall's character was brought um through that incident because it was so personal for him.
Think
It
that
was
what
right.
they didn't like about it was that I think that Pedro Pascal is so inherently likable.
Oh yeah.
I think that they have a tough time, especially with that baby face without the facial hair. I think that they have a really tough time accepting him as a villain.
Well, then that's crazy because the scene where he kills Susan is awful.
It is awful.
Yeah, I don't know how
Yeah,
you can. I mean,
it is awful. So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about violence because
he was a villain in Wonder Woman too. Sorry,
yes, he was. That's
and
true.
people liked him, but they liked him. They didn't.
Love the movie.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, he
Yeah.
was supposed to be the villain. You're supposed to hate him, but yeah.
So, it's really interesting. I was actually thinking about this a little bit because, as you know, I don't watch things that are too gory, and yet I somehow seem to be fine with John Wick and with The Equalizer, which has quite, and then the last Equalizer has a lot of violence in it.
Yeah.
So, number one, I do want to talk about patterns of violence in movies, and then why I seem to be okay with some violence, not others. So, number one, I definitely think you had made this comment while watching the Equalizer movies. You said that they really make sure that the villains are just absolutely not beyond any redemption. Like you want to see them dead.
Yeah.
And I think I had this really powerful reaction to that trend when it started. And I think that it started with Die Hard and with Lethal Weapon
Hmm.
movies, but I think especially the first Die Hard. So the first Die Hard and the first Lethal Weapon movies, actually same kind of premise, like these guys, like these heroes come in and then they display all these unlikely skills,
Yeah.
these like amazing skills.
Yeah.
And in particular, the first Lethal Weapon movie, Mel Gibson turns out to be a former special ops person who's now a cop,
Yeah.
and he's like a narcotics cop, a
Mhm.
narcotics detective. Anyway, the sequels to Die Hard and to Lethal Weapon were so gratuitously violent.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Die Hard 2 really traumatized me because that began the trend of making the villains so awful.
Right. Right.
Like the villains would kill so many people.
Mhm.
And by the way, they were far worse than the way that the villains would kill people in Die Hard 2
Yeah.
and in Lethal Weapon 2 were far worse
Yeah.
than Equalizer, like far worse. So it was actually, I saw Die Hard 2 in the theater. There's one scene in which the villains pretend that they're cooperating. That's when they take over the airport. Number one, the plot is improbable because there's no way that you could hold all of the DC airports hostage. But then number two, they pretend that they're cooperating, and then they lead them to believe that they're letting a plane land, and instead they crash a plane with like 300 people aboard. And so you are rooting for them to these, but you actually see all the passengers on this plane, and then like the plane crashes and all of them die.
Mm.
And you're just, and I was just sitting there going, oh my God, like I cannot believe how bad these villains are. So it was so gratuitous and so gory, but it did start this whole trend in action movies about making, you have to make the villains unredeemable,
Mm.
you know, and John Wick and definitely Equalizer, like they, although I don't think that they take it as far as those early action sequences. And then the other thing is that I think that after coming to terms with this new, because I really love a good action adventure movie,
Yeah.
and I love it. Like I love the pacing of it. I love how exciting. I also love how it doesn't stay with me. Like it doesn't. Action adventure movies don't stay with me in the same way that horror movies do. So
Yeah.
like really disturbing psychological thrillers, those things like get into my brain and then they show up in nightmares and then I have the worst time getting them out of my brain and I'm traumatized by them forevermore. So like for example, I will never be able to watch the movie Seven again, ever, 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 ever,
Oh
ever.
yeah.
I will never be able to watch the movie Seven again because it traumatized me so badly. But a really great action adventure movie, I just love if the hero's the right kind of hero, like Keanu Reeves or Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
If it's the right kind of hero,
Yeah.
it's so entertaining for me.
Yeah.
And the violence, even though it's awful, I don't sort of take this conservative approach like, oh, this is why there's so much gun violence
Yeah.
today. I actually think that I can handle a certain level of righteous violence. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like when the violence is being committed for justice.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a morally troubling thing for me to admit. But I will definitely say that action movies, action adventure movies, are probably in my top genre. Like I'm always searching that genre before any. It's why I want to see The Beekeeper so badly. I'm always searching that genre of movies, but it has to be right. Like
Yeah.
violence can't be too gratuitous, like the Die Hard sequels, like the Lethal Weapon sequels. Violence cannot be too gratuitous. The hero has got to be, you got to root for them all the way. They can't give it all away. They have to have gravitas,
Mhm.
like they have to have a dignity about them,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to get the idea that they're meting out justice, but they're not doing it with enjoyment.
Yeah.
They're actually morally conflicted about it.
Yeah. And something that helps again, with that is the context of the world that we're in.
Yes,
So it's
absolutely.
so easy to believe the Matrix or to feel justified with the Matrix violence because we're in a fake, construct.
Right.
So it's like, and that's what makes, the really ridiculous powers, like in the slow-mo and the levitating or whatnot. Like that's what makes that really believable and fun. And then with John Wick, they sort of established this like, okay, so there's this high class assassin hit organization, and it's run by the high table. Who knows who those people are? But we do know that they run everything. There's a lot of money involved, and we hate them because they're elitist and horrible. Like that's why I love John Wick 4, by the way. But so and John Wick is purely killing for selfish reasons, like just because like selfish, just in our view reasons. So all that is justified in our eyes, and then but then in the Equalizer, it's fully just like real life. It's like normal every day-to-day life. But we love Denzel's character enough because he's a community member, and also because he almost every single person he gives like a choice.
Yes,
He's
he
like
does. He wants them to turn away
because
from violence.
yeah,
Yes.
a lot of times I'll watch these shows, no matter what world it's in, like Game of Thrones, like that's medieval. Like of course they're gonna cut somebody's head off if they're a
Of
deserter.
course.
Yeah, of course they're gonna. There's an executioner, obviously,
No.
and I'm thinking to myself, like, what if they just like talked it out? What if they just like, man to man had a conversation, right?
Cup of coffee.
Yeah, yeah, just over a cup of coffee. Um, and it's so funny because Robert McCall, like Denzel's character, actually does that. Like he actually tries to sit down and like he first proves that he could do some shit or not, and with those first Russian guys in the first movie, and he's
Yes.
like, listen to me, like I'm gonna kill you if you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you want to maybe do the right thing, but because he's so like they don't believe him.
Yeah, he offered them $9,800.
Yeah, because he's so serious. Yeah, anyways, like that makes that believable. So,
Yes. He, by the way, Denzel, I think is such a good actor because I remember details of his physical actions. Like it's not just
Yes.
so
Oh my
so
God.
like when
His
he
smile, like
his smile,
his
like
deadpan stare,
yeah,
it's
his
like
head,
all very recognizable.
it's very recognizable. I even remember the way that he takes the envelope back from Slavi and he like folds it carefully and then you hear the crackling of the
Yeah.
envelope as you hold it and then he puts it in his pocket. Little details like that, I think number one, great sound, you know, but
Yeah.
also just great. He invests every movement with significance,
Yeah.
you know, and so I think that there is a very particular genre of action movies
Mm.
that I like, and it has to be you can't just do a generic action adventure like Secret Hitman now needs to put their mad assassin skills to good use. You can't do that. So we've talked about this a lot. Nobody did not work for me at all.
Nobody did not work.
And he's a good actor.
Yeah.
Those are good actors in that. And it was well done, that
It
movie.
was well done. All the action was great.
Yes, did
So
not work for me at
yeah,
all.
but because they didn't justify it like the narrative reasons. It was in the real world. It was in the real world, but also like he was just bored basically. So that's like not a good enough excuse to be committing all these horrible acts,
Yes.
you know?
It's sort of what draws you in, what hooks you in. Like I'm a huge fan of Jason Statham.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like his little twinkly humor. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, really? You want to do this? You
Yeah.
want to do this right now?
Yeah.
Like I will mess with you. So Jason Statham,
Oh,
great.
you gotta be kidding
You
me.
got to be kidding me. Exactly.
Ah,
So
I
it's
always have
barely
to do everything
concealed.
for you guys
And
because I'm the best.
he's also, by the way, he plays against type because he's like a short little bald guy.
Mm.
He's jacked, obviously. Like he's jacked, but he really does look kind of
But you
ordinary.
see, he's like so stereotypically like male energy.
Yeah.
You see the veins popping out of his head, like
Yeah.
he's just like such a stereotypical angry man that it's like it's just absurdist and like
Yes.
crazy.
Do you know who else was really good in this part, which we have not talked about very much? But do you remember the crazy movie we saw with, I think it was Jackie Chan, where his daughter
Oh, The
killed him.
Foreigner.
Like,
Yeah, I scrolled
that's a
by that.
that's a great example of this.
Yeah.
That movie totally works.
Yeah, that movie did work. It just got distracted by plot,
Yes.
and like the IRA. I think it was called the IRA, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah. They
IRA.
were, that's right.
Like they
There's a
got
lot of like unnecessary plot.
way super plot heavy, like history and like Irish, like I was like not understanding. But Jackie Chan was a great character and there were great action scenes in that.
Right.
I
And
still remember to this day like the TV, like he like fucking slammed some TV on a
yes.
guy.
I remember the scene where
Because he was some random guy again.
he's holding the dog in the elevator afterwards,
Yeah,
after he blows up the
yeah,
apartment.
yeah.
Anyway, oh, so
Warner
maybe
sequels.
okay, so justified violence, right? It cannot be too gratuitous. Like
Yeah,
you can't have the villains kill too many people. You can't have them go over the top, being
right.
cartoonishly bad. And then the third thing that probably then works for me in these action adventure movies is that everybody has to play against type. You can't pick this guy out as that guy's an assassin. You know what I mean? Like Jackie Chan, little nebbishy Chinese
Yeah.
guy, right?
Oh,
Denzel
okay.
Washington, grandfatherly, like old guy.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
call him Pops, for God's
Right,
sake.
right.
They call him Pops. And even John Wick, like he is probably Keanu Reeves is
The
probably
nobody? Like that's what he says in the beginning.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
the fucking
Nobody,
nobody?
yeah, exactly that. Nobody, some guys,
That
dog.
fucking nobody
Nobody.
is John
John
Wick.
Wick.
That's it. Yeah.
No, I saw him kill 3 people
Yeah, unique in
with a
some way.
pencil.
I mean, and if it's gonna be
And Jason
stereotypical,
Statham, it's the humor. Like
yeah,
it's
if it's gonna be stereotypical, then flip it on its head,
right.
in some way.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Like maybe like if they were gonna have Jason Statham be a different character, like he could be like clumsy. I don't
yes,
know. Like that would be
make
stupid.
one of these movies.
Nah, it's fine. It's cool.
I will say one of the things that I appreciate, by the way, one of the things I appreciate, maybe this is why nobody didn't work, although I think that Bob Odenkirk did a really, I mean, I think he gave it the old college try, was that I've seen some of these YouTube videos where they talk about how they teach the actor, even though they have stunt doubles, right? they still have to teach the actor how to realistically hold a gun, and how to realistically
Right.
fight. Because even though they have stunt doubles doing most of it, the actor still has to sort of be in the beginning and the end in terms of those shots.
Yeah.
So, like the guys, the stunt coordinators, they love Keanu Reeves because he works so hard at the
Accuracy.
yes, they work so hard. Like they will show him working with multiple
So
multiple
good. And
guns.
he does a lot of stunts.
Yeah, he does a lot of his own stunts, but he still has a stunt double, and he also like he gives gifts to the crew. He's perfect. What did I just say? Keanu Reeves is perfect. So anyway, but he does a lot of that training. Denzel, who is not known for the physicality, Dad hates that word because they use it in basketball all the time. They use it for like they're always commenting on the physicality of the physicality of players. However, Denzel does not strike me as an overly physical actor. Like he doesn't strike me as somebody, but however, they have somehow choreographed his fight so that he does the most damage with the most limited
Yeah, yeah.
movements.
It's all
Like
calculated.
it's all calculated and it's tiny.
You were in the third one,
It's
I
the
loved.
medial nerve, right? Like that you're
Yeah.
like
In the
paying.
third one, I loved when he said like you're standing too close to me.
Yeah, exactly. Or in the first movie, when he's like, the guy was like, "You want to see my gun? You want to see my gun?" And he's like, like that movement, like he just takes the gun away. Which, by the way,
That's the best shot in all the movies, I think.
I know, I think that is a comedy. I think in an upcoming movie. Oh, it's The Fall Guy. So The Fall Guy is coming out in May. It just premiered at South by Southwest, which oddly enough has a lot. Oh, by the way, South by Southwest had two action movies premiere. One was The Monkey Man,
Oh yeah, I want to see that.
which is another
That looks
assassin revenge movie.
yeah, looks
And
cool.
then and then it also had The Fall Guy, which is an homage to stuntmen. It's like it's
Let's do it for every race. Let's do it for every cultural or ethnic group. Let's just like let's keep coming up with these ideas because they're great.
Yeah, so there's this really funny moment. Like Ryan Gosling is really leaning into his comedic era, which people think started with The Nice Guys.
Mm.
But Ryan Gosling, there's a scene where he's a stuntman, so he doesn't really know this stuff. So he points a gun at a bad guy in the movie, and that guy does exactly
Yeah.
what Denzel does. Like he just rips away from him and like points at him, and Ryan Gosling's like, shh.
Yeah.
He's like, I've seen that movie so many times, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah. Yes.
So anyway,
Can't wait.
I do think that action adventure movies are harder to pull off than most people realize. And I think that The Equalizer does a really good, at least all three movies together, they do a really good job of capturing all of the elements that I like, plus Denzel. Like
Mhm.
Denzel is just great. As far as I'm concerned, Denzel, Jason, and Keanu, maybe Ryan Gosling, but he's
Yeah.
always going to be joking about those are the only three people who are allowed to be.
Yeah. One more thing I'll mention,
Yeah.
like narratively that works is with these movies is you like because I read this for some analysis about Die Hard was that if you have a good enough villain that will like just in the structure of the story, the villain will do things and then the action hero will react to those things. Like um it's always a response like to what they do. So
Yes.
so Alan Rickman and Die Hard like what took control of the building and kidnapped all these people and Bruce Willis just happened to be there.
Yeah.
Like he was just like a cop from fuck, I'm from New York, I hate LA, like all this shit. So um like that reaction is what is compelling.
Yeah.
So it's not the hero being like, I need to be doing this. John Wick, he's on the run. And then except Equalizer is actually unique, I think, because he's not as reactive. He's fully deciding. He's seeing. It's more observation and
Right.
like him deciding to go for it. But I think it's because his character is so strong that
Yeah.
like if you have a strong enough character that's super well-rounded, like it's you could do whatever.
Yeah. I love, by the way, people excerpt Equalizer all the time on YouTube. Also, the algorithm is just serving me up those scenes again and again. But I love that in the comments, people deconstruct
Yeah,
all these little genius things that Denzel does. So there, for example, when he kills Pushkin,
yeah,
they're like, did you see how Denzel was like flipping the lights on and off so Pushkin couldn't tell that he had left the room? They
yeah,
were like, oh
yeah.
my God. So stuff like
So
that.
cool.
Yeah, stuff like that. Actually, by the way, if a director actually invests the time to put in those little details to make it plausible, like, okay, the screenplay will say, you're gonna leave while Pushkin's still talking to you and trying to negotiate with you.
Yeah.
It must be so gratifying as a filmmaker to have these people nerd out on your little details.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
we need to get like why you did that, why you made that choice
yeah,
in the movie.
absolutely.
But anyway, I'm so glad you watched all three.
I'm glad to. They were good.
And we'll talk. I don't know what we'll talk about next time, but I'm dying to add a line to our usual sign off. So normally we sign off. I mean, I always say I love you. I'm really happy we got to do this one in person because I love doing them in person with you. But I also want to say in homage to the Equalizer, see you at work.
Yeah, see you at work.
See you at work.
Yeah, love you too. And that was good. We'll figure out what we're doing next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe the original Matrix, which Eric just saw in the theater,
I don't know.
which
I
I
feel
know
like
practically.
I will talk about the same things, I feel like, but yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, thanks.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.